Guys, I'm here with CJ. We're doing a Gen Z report. I'm going to get my new little thing up here. And we're joined tonight where this is exciting. So I'm going to do little introductions because I have my little handy dandy chart right here. So guys, friend of our show, Generational Change, Harvey Kaye, the professor, is here. He is a professor of democracy and justice studies at the University of Wisconsin Green Bay, and an award-winning author of many books. And he has contributed to many publications, and he contributes to our show, most importantly. And we are also being joined by William Walter, who is policy research and training lead organizer for Our Revolution Wisconsin, which we're going to talk and hit on a lot of the details about the Supreme Court race there and some of the other things that are going on. And you guys know CJ, so I'm going to bring in Harvey and William. Hi, guys. Welcome to the Gen Z report.
Hi. On behalf of Will, I do want to say
what?
It's not Our Revolution Wisconsin.
What is it?
Our Wisconsin Revolution.
Oh, for the love of all those. Okay, guys.
No, wait, it does make a difference. I was going to point it out too.
Let me make it
Harvey
clear.
will explain why. Yeah,
I'm going to explain. Our revolution is floundering a bit.
Okay.
Our Wisconsin Revolution is thriving.
Okay. So they're indeed different organizations, but okay.
We're
sorry.
We're under the umbrella, but we work independently.
Okay. Fair enough. So what, guys, we're going to start. CJ's going to moderate and do the whole thing. I feel like at some point we're going to get where I don't even have to be here, CJ. So go ahead.
Great. Yes.
So let me just say it's a pleasure to meet you, CJ, and always great to see you, Jen.
Thank you. And it's nice to meet you, William.
You as well. I followed your campaign in 2020 quite closely.
Thank you.
So
when I asked him, well, would you like to come on this evening? He said, I'm a big fan.
Oh, that's so
I've been following you that whole time. Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice. Well, we have a lot of stuff going on. We have a lot of stuff brewing, but and this is just one of those little projects. So CJ, it's yours.
Yes. So as we have discussed for the past 2 weeks, we've been talking about, hey, we got really, really big election that's been happening in Wisconsin, and the results are in. We have a lot of really, really great news and a little bit of unfortunate news when it came to the election results. We do have a lot more expertise, as my two guests tonight are both in Wisconsin, one of which being in that 8th district. And to give a little bit of background for those who have not been following or those new, is Wisconsin has elections on their Supreme Court justices, and the most recent election was essentially for a variety of issues, the biggest of which being gerrymandering and looking at the results of the Wisconsin maps, where Democrats, in order to win, had to get an over 50% of the vote to still be not controlling nearly as much as the legislature, while the state itself being very, very purple, as well as the being able to enshrine a woman's right to choose, to not be sending the law back to the 1800s. So this is a really, really great win. And I believe she won by, was it 14 points?
11 points.
11 points. Okay.
I was very sad. I projected 15 points, and then I was like, oh, shoot, we only managed to pull 11. And a lot of my friends were like looking at me like, dude, come on. And I was like, we got to send a message.
We'll point out, Evers won, our governor, Democratic governor, won re-election by how many votes?
Oh, I'd have to double check the votes. I know he won by 6 points, which is considered essentially a Wisconsin landslide, particularly as you mentioned, CJ. It is a 50-50 state.
Yeah, but this election was decidedly, I'll go so far as to call it a landslide in essence. Also because of the places, despite what happened in the 8th Senate district, the places where liberals prevailed. That's important. Okay.
Yes. So we had, again, this massive win. So again, congratulations to everyone that voted. Congratulations to everyone that canvassed. Congratulations to everyone that phone banked and just let other people know. And this, again, was a massive victory for many reasons. Now, there was also a election or special election for the 8th Senate seat, and that has gone to the GOP by, I believe it was 900 votes ultimately, at least last I checked.
A little bit more. It was 1,300 votes. It was It was 1 point for most of the night until one of the more conservative areas on the western side of the district were the last to report it, and it bumped it up to 1,300. But I talking about that race in particular, I have a very soft spot for that because Jody Haber-Sinekin, in my opinion, was one of the best candidates in the entire state. This is a woman with an impeccable resume. She's an environmental attorney who worked on the Great Lakes water protection, as well as quite literally wrote the bipartisan puppy mill ban in the state of Wisconsin. And that's something that we said at Doors quite a bit was, if you can't win on clean water and protecting puppies, we have a bigger problem with the American electorate than gerrymandered maps, right? Like that seems like it should be two pretty safe issues. And Jody took what was a +9 conservative district, and final results were within 2 points. So all things considered, it was an incredible, incredible performance. I'd say she put in a Herculean effort, really, considering the 4-month window of a special election. I don't like to, because you're not the only one who has said this, but a lot of people are really frustrated with the loss, and they're sad. Oh, I wish we had pulled this off. All things considered, this seat has been held by conservatives since 1992. Alberta Darling is the only state senator I have known in my entire life. To even get close is a massive, massive victory, and just shows not only how good of a candidate Jody was, but how the demographics in these areas are switching and how progressive issues can win even in what's considered safe conservative communities. This district was created to be a free win for Representative Knodel, and he barely pulled it out.
Yeah.
Yes. And my understanding is within the Wisconsin districts that are blue, again, just giving a little bit of additional insight to how gerrymandered the state is I believe it's +40 for Democrats in the 2 states that they do hold, correct? Based off of the 2020 elections?
I'm not entirely sure. Could you phrase what are you getting at specifically?
So
I can tell you.
So what I'm saying is that, especially again on the state that is 50-50 split, we do have a circumstance where you literally have of that 50-50 all crammed into 2 different voting districts. Which then
predominantly Milwaukee
so
and Milwaukee County and Dane County are the 2 largest counties in the state, quite handedly, actually. And I have the 5 largest, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so the 6 largest counties in the state: Dane, Milwaukee, Waukesha, Brown, Racine, and Outagamie. 4 of them went to Janet Protasewicz. Dane and Milwaukee handedly 73% to 82%. Waukesha, which has been a GOP safehold for years, the famous WOW counties that are 3 of the whitest and most conservative counties in the country. Dan Kelly didn't even break 60% in Waukesha. This is a community that has been 65 to 70, sometimes higher in the last 10, 15 years.
Tell him it's Scott Walker's
remarkable.
territory. It was Scott Walker's territory.
Okay.
Yeah, Scott Walker's home. Yeah.
So what does that indicate? Like, do you think that like the reign of terror of Scott Walker is starting to evaporate in some cases? That
let me remind people, Wisconsin was historically the home of capital P progressive politics. Okay, and it is the case, of course. Yeah, it's a purple state or whatever. The point is that if the Democrats are running statewide, they win. Okay, that's the key. And the Republicans know that, which is why after 2010, they gerrymandered this state to guarantee no Democrat could win outside of the little spaces that they were afforded.
Yes.
And however many times it went forward to courts, we got stymied on it. Okay. And by the way, Scott Walker's victory, I mean, we're already 2013. That's like 13 years ago we're talking. So a lot of people who might be watching wouldn't realize that Scott Walker victory in the Republican control of the legislature led not only to the reapportionment, which is outrageous, it also led to the loss of collective bargaining rights for public employees. Now, what does that say? This was the first state to grant public employees collective bargaining rights in 1959. So it was tragic that they were literally stripped from those of us who are public employees, state university, professors, the whole crew of us. Okay. So the thing is that people wonder, well, I guess this state's going as the rest of the country has been going to the right. The fact is that this would not necessarily have happened. And by the way, the C is missing from Wisconsin in my.
Oh my
Okay.
God, good catch. I'm terrible.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
This is what happens when Peter's not here. Like normally there's two of us that I'm like doing all right. Sorry. I'm back to it.
no, that's okay. The point is that this is a state that should have remained essentially Democratic. The Democrats blew it nationally and statewide. Nationally, we went to the right as a state because of the Clintons, period, and the Obama administration, period. It was called NAFTA, and the utter failure of Obama's administration to send even a single person to Wisconsin when we occupied the state capital to protect our collective bargaining rights. The Democrats blew this state when it didn't have to be blown. Having said that, we're now some years on. The fact is, the Walker years were a disaster for this state, disaster, and the time has gotten to, even Wisconsinites came to see what was needed, and the best proof of that, okay, is the fact that while Green Bay, the city, is Democratic, Brown County that surrounds it has been Republican, and as Will pointed out, Brown County went liberal in this vote. Now, let me make something clear. So now now liberals will control the Supreme Court. However, right now, all that does is if suits come before the Supreme Court to reverse what would be argued would be unconstitutional initiatives about everything from voting to women's right to choose, which it's an old law in the books that, has yet to be applied in the state, but could be applied had we not taken the Supreme Court. But also the whole question of collective bargaining rights and apportionment. This state was literally turned back a few generations by the Walker governorship and the Republican control of the legislature. So here's the thing. The battle to gain what we once had will not be enough. Democrats have got to discover or literally come to grips with the fact that you cannot win this state by standing still. They are going to have to not only recover what we lost, okay, we are going to have to create new rights as we go forward. There was a guy about 100 years ago, 120 years ago, right? Will and I talked about this earlier today. You're going to protect the rights that your fathers granted you by affording new rights to your own children. That's the shorthand of the quote that I would cite. So this state was at a tipping point and is now at a tipping point in another direction. We can literally restore progressive Wisconsin, but that's going to require smashing our way into, sorry, that was unkind. Let me be nicer. The progressives are going to have to demand that the Democratic Party stop taking orders from the DNC.
That's a good thing.
I got your back here, Harvey. So it's a Henry Lloyd quote. The price of liberty is something more than eternal vigilance. There must also be eternal advance. We can save the rights we have inherited from our fathers only by winning new ones to bequeath our children. Yeah.
When the Democrats come to realize that, Wisconsin will become the progressive state that the citizens of this state desire.
Yeah. And Harvey touched on Wisconsin statewide elections over the past few years. So in 2022, Ron Johnson obviously won re-election as well as the Republican treasurer. However, that was the first time a Republican has won a statewide race since Ron Johnson's 2016 run. So this 50-50 state has been going blue statewide election after statewide election after statewide election. And the numbers behind the scenes again, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but some of the quote unquote safe conservative districts are astounding. If you take a look at the final results map, pretty much, in fact, literally the entire southwest corner of Wisconsin, every single county went to Janet Protasewicz. Former GOP strongholds like the city of Waukesha, Mequon, Port Washington, Deansville, Franklin, Oak Creek. Not only did they not go heavily conservative, Janet Protasewicz won these counties. She won the city of Waukesha by about 100 votes. It's the first time a liberal has won the city in years. Republicans won it 61-39 in the spring primary. Astounding turnout.
Right.
Don Kelly didn't even break 60% in the county itself.
And the punchline to all of this, as long as this is CJ's night and Will's here, is that it was young people who made a radical difference these last couple of elections here in Wisconsin. The question of the women's right to choose and a whole host of other issues actually drove young people to the polls.
And CJ mentioned too, Dane County and Milwaukee County. There's this kind of narrative that it's just Madison and Milwaukee carrying election after election after election. Well, Madison and Milwaukee obviously went heavily to Janet. Milwaukee was D plus 107,000. Dane was plus 153,000. There were a couple of wards in Madison that were like 98% Protasiewicz. But Mike Wagner, who's a professor at UW-Madison, political scientist, he does a tremendous job, noted that despite Dane County going 82% to 18% for Janet Protasiewicz, she still would have won the state if you took away all of her Dane County votes, 196,000. Let Kelly keep his 43,000. She still would have won. That is wild. Absolutely wild. She won by north of 200,000 votes. And Harvey, I went back and looked. Evers won by 90,000, which again at the time was considered to be a landslide.
Yeah.
She more than doubled that victory.
Right.
Turnout at campuses was nuts. Dane County was north of 60%. Wisconsin's turnout yesterday was 39%. Shattered records for a spring election. That's higher than 12 different United States states had in their fall midterm turnout.
Okay.
What do we have next, CJ?
So yeah, that has been all fantastic news. Now the caveat, just as far as the 8th Senate district was more so, it now has the GOP does have 2/3 veto overriding power and can be suspending Supreme Court justices, which is kind of a concern if it's an elevation of the destruction of democracy. But again, as far as trends go, very, very fantastic news. Now,
wait, one second.
Yeah.
Yep.
Democrats could never get anything. We haven't seen a Democratic initiative in legislature since 2010, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So getting the majority, getting that super majority,
it's not likely.
It's not going to. It really might not change anything. And as a matter of fact, I don't mean things should get worse in order to get better. But if the Republicans pursue the agenda that they might have in mind, they will never be heard from again in this state. I hope. They've already seen. One of my students who's politically active in central Wisconsin, a very red area. I don't mean, when I say red, I'm still living in the past, a socialist area. It's a very red Republican area. Okay. The fact is, he said,
I feel you, Harvey.
I don't know how that happened, but nevertheless, it's the case. He said, look, right now, the GOP, their heads are spinning. They are in disarray. They won one seat. They don't know what the hell they're going to do. Okay.
Yes. So the big thing is talking from the JenZ perspective and to comment to the YouTube comment that came in. It's like, yes, I personally am very concerned, but unfortunately it's either, hey, we're going to start doing mad impeachments over small things and taking political issues, which given the Tennessee, what happened in Tennessee with they expelling 2 House members is very, very concerning and definitely yet another elevation. Like that is okay. We're really hurting with democracy. But the question the main topic I wanted to get to tonight is young people. We're active. We're engaged. We still aren't at above 50% voter participation. I believe our 2022 midterms where we had 27% voter participation, which one of the biggest indicators of voting in the future is if you vote in the past election. So to have such a great turnout in the previous election, I think is a very, very good stance. And then we also are more and more aware of there's these major corporate powers. We're more and more aware of there's all these different parts. But my question becomes, if we're talking in the context of labor, if we're talking in the context of how easy is it for us to organize, how easy is it for us to protest and ask for these things? You being a historian, I want to know, how are we looking now compared to about 50 years ago, where we were able to have the civil rights protests and getting everything passed with that? Granted, that was 70s, but getting those done and getting those changes versus 100 years ago, where people were getting shot for protests, versus how that shook up to in 2020, especially with BLM. We had one of the largest protests in modern U.S. history, and a lack of change. So if there is anything that we can kind of get from historical context, and if there's any advice that we can kind of take from those areas.
Yeah, I mean, let's peg things from the 1930s. Franklin Roosevelt's first 2 terms as president, the New Deal years. When Roosevelt took office, he was already predetermined to pursue what we would definitely call a progressive agenda. But in terms of the 1933 politics, it was a radical agenda.
Yes.
A radical agenda. Okay. And in his initial 100 days, he made heads spin with the legislation that he and the Democrats enacted. Subjected finance to public regulation and control. They created the Civilian Conservation Corps. They created the Public Works Administration. They created the National Industrial Recovery Act, which was supposed to be the law that empowered workers with the right to organize and bargain collectively. Capitalists found their way around that law, and thus later in 1935, the Democrats enacted the National Labor Relations Act. And this is the key thing, because you're asking about organizing. I don't know did you happen to watch the Bernie Sanders grilling, or at least the committee hearings with Howard Schultz?
It was as much as I could stomach of Schultz, but yes, it was good. CJ, you watched it, right?
I'm not sure the exact thing that you're referring
to. Yeah.
Okay, so the Health, Education, Labor, and whatever committee that Bernie convened and called Howard Schultz, the head of Starbucks, in to testify regarding his labor practices. Howard Schultz did a damn good job testifying. I actually felt like he came away feeling like he may have won the day, but that's not the point. There was in the course of those hearings, the Republicans, especially, I believe it was Cassidy. What state is Cassidy from?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Bill Cassidy, that's Louisiana, isn't it?
Yeah, from Louisiana. He made this argument about the NLRB is not pursuing a nonpartisan, objective, centrist kind of approach to labor management relations. Well, if he read the law, the National Labor Relations Act, however much it's been battered over the years, remains the case. Government, the federal government, is supposed to take the side of the workers. Yep. It was created to make sure that workers had the right to organize and that those rights were recognized by their employers. The shorthand for it is government was to have the backs of the workers. Okay. That's something that, unfortunately, nobody pointed that out effectively in those hearings. Okay. So it was the case. Labor grew by the millions, no joke, by the millions, and then grew all the more during World War II, which is another story. Capital was absolutely convinced that they were losing control, and the organizing was done by young left activists, communists, socialists, progressives, radicals, whatever term you want to use. In 1947, because of the confusion after the war of troops returning and moving around the country to create civilian lives for themselves, workers who had moved to the Gulf Coast and to the West Coast to build ships and transports, everyone was on the move. And they were also eager not to be subject to the laws that prevailed in the executive orders of World War II. The Republicans won control of Congress in 1946, and they passed the Taft-Hartley Act. The Taft-Hartley Act was anti-labor and decidedly racist. And what do I mean by that? The Taft-Hartley Act allowed states to become, in quotes, right-to-work states. Okay, right-to-work states. Especially that meant in the South, though there were other areas of the country where, like out west in a couple of cases. Now, why was it racist? Because basically what it meant is if the Southern Democratic white supremacists could keep their control of labor, they could continue segregation of labor, Jim Crow laws, what we know of as apartheid in modern terms. So when the AFL and the CIO, both labor federations, targeted the South for organizing, they ran right into the wall of that Taft-Hartley Act.
Yep.
So nevertheless,
and to clarify for those who are not as familiar with right to work, the right to work is you cannot force someone to join a union, which
Right.
then decreases union membership and union dues, because that union, despite protecting everyone, you can essentially have a lot of freeloaders, which then makes the union a lot weaker because they can't get.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
So
but
continue on. I
nevertheless-
just wanted to clarify that.
Oh, great. That's perfect. By 1953-55, 1 of every 3 workers belonged to a union. Despite the law, workers continue to join unions. However, in the South, that those numbers did not increase as one might have expected. Okay. In the 1960s, it was an age of public employee mobilizations. And in fact, as I said before, in 1959, the state of Wisconsin set the pace by granting public employees collective bargaining rights. In the 1970s, Capital, I'm going to shorthand it, Capital declared war on labor. It's there. Rockefeller gave the speeches. The Lewis Powell memorandum, if you go online, just look it up, was the memorandum by the corporate lawyer from Virginia, Lewis Powell, who sent a famous memorandum, at the time secret, but later became famous, a memorandum basically telling the Chamber of Commerce, now is the time we have to respond to all of these assaults on business by labor, environmentalists, and others. The Trilateral Commission was formed in those early 1970s, chaired by David Rockefeller, organized by Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was the professor at Harvard University in politics, who also then chose Jimmy Carter to be the Democratic nominee, and who was a member of the Trilateral Commission, as was George H.W. Bush. They declared war on labor, on poor people's movements, on the women's movement. Every single progressive movement was targeted. It's not a conspiracy. It was all announced publicly. The problem was the Democratic Party did not respond effectively. And by the end of the decade, as they used to say, the fastest growing enterprise in America in the 1970s was union busting law firms. The climax to those years was when Reagan
deregulated, screwed the air traffic controllers.
The air traffic controllers, who had one of the few labor unions who had endorsed Reagan for president in his campaign for president, then expected that they would finally see some relief on their jobs. We're very surprised to see that Reagan administration couldn't care less. And what ended up happening is they went out on strike and Reagan fired all of them. That was the largest union busting effort in American history. Okay?
And I think, honestly, nothing has been that bad up until Joe Biden, right, recently with the railroad workers union. But we're not going to get sidetracked into railroad workers right now.
Right. Which, by the way, would be a great conversation.
But a whole other hour show.
We've done it. We've covered it. We actually had a couple of the railroad workers union members on, as well as a driver for Norfolk Southern. And we've done this shit. Like, it's crazy how they're treated.
Right. No, I'll just say one thing. Everyone believes it was the screwing of the railway workers was the congressional vote to block the strike. No, it was when Biden, months earlier, basically.
Yes.
Okay. And by the way, people might wonder, what could he have done? Well, what he could have done is he could have met with the railway bosses and said, I'm going to save Christmas. If you don't give railway workers healthcare days off and decent benefits and all the things that go along with a 21st century, sort of decency, I'm going to nationalize by executive order the railways.
Thank you. Yeah, I love when people act like he has no power to do anything. Then if the president has no power to do anything, why are we concerned with who has that job?
So this is also what this was going to be the level of questioning that I was going to go to.
Okay.
Is
And
asking
now
on
to
the
just- and
historically.
then the last thing
Mhm.
is, it's my impression, tragically, the Amazon organizing efforts are stymied right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the Starbucks folks are not. And the Starbucks folks are young people who will not be stymied. The
Yeah.
tragedy is they can't organize at the national level. They have to organize shop by shop by shop. But I can tell you, if Bernie's serious, two things based on the hearings that they held the other day. He talked about bringing Schultz back within a few weeks to testify again how he has better addressed labor relations. By the way, based on those hearings, that should have been a court trial because he could have been indicted for what he did. He broke the law, Schultz and the company. Nevertheless, the second thing is that back in now go back to the 1930s, Robert La Follette Jr., who was the senator from the state. His father was senior Robert La Follette, the famous progressive. The son,
Fighting Bob, if you've heard of him.
Fighting Bob. The son, in the 30s, that progressive Republican folk, FDR turned his back on the Democratic Party in Wisconsin in the 30s and basically backed the progressives in the state of Wisconsin. Robert La Follette Jr. launched a Senate investigation. It was called the La Follette Committee, that traveled around the country investigating labor practices. And it revealed to Americans, this is historical fact, that major corporations were creating arsenals in their factories, armored cars, machine guns, all of that stuff in order to fend off labor occupations and other kinds of working class initiatives. Well, maybe Bernie should take these hearings on the road. Admittedly, we have television today. They didn't have television then. But one thing, if Bernie did, is it might well encourage all the more young people at Starbucks and Amazon warehouses to say, well, hell, indeed, let's organize, right? And let's see how Bezos and Schultz and the rest of the billionaires would respond to that kind of energy, because Biden hasn't afforded it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the through line from and thank you for the historical details, because I'm somewhat familiar with okay, here's the big things, of course, but educating everyone on that.
Yeah, and if
The
I
through
sound
line
angry,
that I got,
I am.
no,
I
No,
am.
you're
oh
not.
yeah, no, it's
Not with you.
absolutely
I'm
perfect.
angry because they had the audacity to portray Biden as the next FDR.
Oh, he's the most progressive president in our lifetime.
In their lifetime,
technically
not
correct.
my lifetime. Even Lyndon Johnson, war aside, was the most progressive in my lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, personal opinions, it's like I wasn't expecting as much, and he has done a lot more than I expected it. But so the through line, though, I got FDR kind of came in and said, we are doing these things, and then implemented these policies. You had Reagan, who came in with a coordinated effort of a lot of people from Capitol, and then undid a lot of these various things. Where my question is
Carter.
Sorry,
Okay.
Carter.
Carter paved the way for Reagan.
Okay.
So where my question comes in, and if what I was hoping to have answered is, for us, I'm not going to be the president, at least
Not yet.
not in 20 years, and probably not ever. I am someone where I will canvass, I will donate, I will come and speak my mind. What have you found historically in terms of what has worked to actually push things in? Is it literally we just need to find the right people and vote in the right people and convince people to vote for this? Or is it as simple as that? Or are there other things?
Okay, let's start with the first part. The first part of your question. I may have said this on Jen's show already.
Mm-hmm.
If a candidate tells you they want to fight for you, don't trust them. If a candidate inspires the fight in you, trust them. That's the candidate you want, okay, when you go to vote. Otherwise, be prepared to vote defensively. That's okay. Let's put it that way. But I will also tell you, if the labor movement is not reinvigorated on a massive scale, the Democrats have no chance of winning because the Republicans will mobilize the unorganized more effectively by using the cultural issues, by talking about Democrats as big spenders, Democrats as identity politics.
The coastal
champions.
elites. I hear that a lot in suburban Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Well, the Democrats do come off that way. They do. They come off as sanctimonious. and elitist.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it turns people off. And when you're having a populist revolution and the Democrats are sanctimonious and elitist, the people are going to go to the right. They're going to go with the right-wing populism that's being offered to them, even though it isn't real.
Okay, the next thing I'm also, as long as you're asking, you find in every county, I assume Florida has county Democratic parties.
We do, but ours is
But
only 6
Yeah,
counties.
I'm actually
have them.
missing my meeting for this podcast.
That's true everywhere. You take them over.
We're working, Florida, the Florida Democratic Party only really exists in like some counties. We don't have, it's out of like all the counties here. I think they're only in like 7 of them or so.
There are 3 clubs within
here's
my
the
county.
tragedy. Here's the tragedy. And I'll use Florida as the proof of my argument. So Republicans, not just Republicans, utterly fascist types win in Florida these days, right? I mean, your governor is like, God help us, okay? I mean, he makes
he leans authoritarian.
He leans authoritarian. I just ordered his book today because I want to.
I'm happy to have a full
book.
Florida episode in the future. But
you want to,
as for now-
Florida episode.
My point is this: when the $15 minimum wage was on the ballot, it passed.
Yep.
And in other states, when progressive issues end up on the ballot, they get an act. They pass.
Yeah.
Moreover, not everywhere, obviously. Moreover, what we just did on Tuesday tells everyone the Democrats have a way forward. You've got to be aggressive on the progressive questions. Okay?
They generally back down and move to the right because they're scared. They'd actually rather win over Republicans than progressives.
And I got a great example, Harvey, the Dunn County
thank you.
nonprofit healthcare. So our Wisconsin Revolution had a little context. Ballot referendums in Wisconsin are non-binding. So there wasn't any actual legislative change. This was more just, let's see what the voters think. But
a sense of the people or something like that.
A sense of the people. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So we went to the Dunn County, which is in northwestern Wisconsin, very rural, very white, very conservative. And they had a problem. The county was spending $500,000 a month on employee health insurance, and it was a massive black hole on their budget month after month after month. Well, John Calabrese, one of the Dunn County supervisors, who was also with OWR at the time, went to them and said, hey, guys, I have a solution. What if we tried, I don't know, or had some kind of national not-for-profit health insurance program? I don't know, maybe toss that out there. And they voted on it. It passed unanimously on the county board. Then it went to the ballot in November. It passed 51-49 in very white, very rural, very conservative Dunn County, Wisconsin, meaning it outperformed the victorious incumbent Democratic governor by 14 points, and it outperformed Mandela Barnes by 17 points. These policies win even in rural conservative America, as long as you avoid the buzzwords, right? They hear Medicare for all, or they hear anything that they can mentally link to socialism, they're going to instantaneously shut down. But nobody likes their health insurance, right? They like their doctors. And when you offer them a potential solution to the predatory insurance industry, they are more than willing to jump on it.
Americans don't trust the Democrats on economic issues because Democrats are portrayed as not having an economic agenda.
Yes. And so what again, to rephrase my question is, I am someone where I have my news from various different things. I try my best to keep up to date and informed. I do my best to educate others. What are the next steps for me to be able to go for collecting? And I'm talking again.
Okay,
me
I'll tell you So
a potential person where I'm
I'm not
interested.
going to put you on
active.
I'm not going to put you on the spot, but the individuals vote.
Yep.
Organizations bring pressure.
So it's
One way or
go
the other.
join my
Well,
local
you could
organization.
do both. I mean, this is something that's really interesting. Like, and if you look at what Shama Sawant's doing right now with Workers Strike Back, and I'm hopeful because she obviously has a proven track record and success and stuff that she's been able to get done. But we've always said, CJ, this is an inside and outside strategy. So you're going to have people that's best, their best roles are on the inside, and there's people whose best roles are on the outside. And as somebody in your position, you can actually play both. And this is something that I see all the time. Like, we'll show up for labor, we'll show up and walk on picket lines, and we'll show up for labor in any way we can. But we're also going to show up for good candidates that are non-corporate, that are fighting for the things we're fighting for. So you have the luxury of being able to participate in both ways. But I would suggest checking out Workers Strike Back organization, because the more she can galvanize nationally in all the different unions, that's the closest chance we're going to have to a unified outside labor strategy, in terms of, congealing all the different unions.
Okay. Sweet.
What are your thoughts on that, on Harvey, on Shama's project?
Well, okay. Last year I was doing my damnedest to try to change the leadership in the AFL-CIO, just for what it's worth.
That's a different story.
Okay. Yes. I think grassroots labor initiatives to create solidarities are to be welcomed. Okay. And look, my view is the more you can move towards a popular front politics as existed in the 30s, the better off we all are. Okay. Now, what does that mean? It means, for example, if there are in various states the diverse organizations, whether it's the Poor People's Movement or Our Revolution or Progressive Democrats of America, which is out in California, all these things, in one sense, great. Let 1,000 flowers bloom, but you can't win if you're duplicating activities. There really needs to be a coalescence, a coalition, because inside, outside, absolutely, Jen. You create the coalitions and you move in and you take over the party. That's the way it has to happen.
That's how the Republicans have been doing it. They're much more concerned with their local on the ground party people, their precinct captains. Like in Florida, our local party, we're a train wreck. Like, it's a train wreck here, and there's no sense of organization. But I still think that it's going to also have to be outside of the electoral process. The pressure that's going to have to come from the outside labor world is going to have to be big. And it's going to be and it's like a chicken and an egg thing, because right now, when you've got right to work laws and we can't seem to even get the PRO Act back in the concept of conversation, you think, well, what power is there? But it's kind of like, it's one of those things where I would say you just got to throw enough shit against the wall and see what sticks. So we have to be fighting on all these different fronts. That's all. All right. I'm sorry, CJ. I'm trying.
So, and then I want to be clear. I'm a labor unionist, so now a retiree member. I actually today, as a consequence of getting to know Will and his team all the more, I joined Our Wisconsin Revolution. Okay. I think that there are organizations out there that one can join. Look, I mean, seriously speaking, I'm impressed by your generations. Okay, your generation. I am impressed.
I'm not in their generation, so I'm assuming you're speaking.
No, we already went through this. Every time I come on this show,
I keep telling you, Harvey, I'm closer to you than I am to them. But okay, I appreciate the compliment.
I do realize that. But their generation, how's that? Their generation. Right. You guys, and the women that I assume are part of your networks, you folks are not going to take the bullshit. But the most important thing is you can't fall into cynicism, and it's too easy to do that if you're not connected to each other. When Bernie said "not me, us" in that campaign, it sounded like it was some kind of Christian morality thing. Well, treat others as you would have yourself treated, kind of thing. No, what it meant is it's a solidarity question. Both a solidarity in terms of the movement, but it's also another kind of solidarity. Let's suppose you're successful in getting people elected. The not me, us is those people are not empowered beyond the vote. You've got to give them power by pushing them constantly. FDR, during his presidency, for all of his faults and failings, he regularly invited the push. He wanted to be pushed. He told a journalist early in his presidency, I don't want to get out too far in front of my fellow citizens, which was to say, I want my fellow citizens to be right up my back pushing me so we can make things happen. He used to tell delegations of progressives who came to see him, trying to convince him to support their cause. He would say, you don't have to convince me. I'm with you. You've got to push me, however. Now, what did that mean? It meant I've got to get others to believe that I have no choice, and they have no choice but to make these things happen. So you've got to join organizations, whether if you work at a place that has a union, you've got to join and become active. And if there isn't a union, you got to start talking it up, admittedly, outside the place, probably because the bosses are going to look for you. But it's also the case you need to join organizations outside. The inside-outside strategy, I can't tell. I love when I go on a show and somebody says, well, what's more important, the movement or politics? And I said,
they have to happen together.
All the above.
It's a symbiotic relationship, and people don't understand that. Like what you were just saying, they get somebody in office and they think, okay, that's it. Now they have to do everything. But it really only works when they look out their window and they see that elected person has 1 million people that are standing outside their office that are with them. And I don't think people understand that as much as they ought to.
Yeah,
democracy is a verb.
Sorry, go ahead, Will.
I was just going to say, democracy is a verb, right? It's an action. You have to be maintaining it day after day after day, 24/7, 365 days a year.
Hillary Clinton, look, I mean,
are you going to go down a Clinton rabbit hole? We're not going to do that.
No, I'm actually going to no, I'm not. What I'm going to tell you is once upon a time, Hillary Clinton said something smart.
Oh, I'm going to need documentation.
I'm telling you, she said, it isn't only a matter of the movement. The civil rights movement was essential. But if Lyndon Johnson wasn't there to sign the bills into law, it wouldn't have won. If he wasn't there to twist arms, they wouldn't have won. Okay.
You mean you don't think Lyndon Johnson would have bowed down to the parliamentarian? I'm just checking.
So as a matter of fact, I mean, I don't even need to answer that. I mean,
no, because if Lyndon Johnson was sitting there, the parliamentarian would have had cinder blocks attached to her ankles.
So to go over the things that we've spoken today, to not go on tangents, because I feel like we're starting to read over things.
Here.
Is that we want to have
the show gets fun.
Your steps for the theoretical, hey, I'm active, I'm engaged, is once you have reached your barrier of education and engagement, then the next steps comes to local organization, where either being in your local political parties and trying to meet with those, like a certain Southeast, your district club for Democrats, or whatever part that you're trying to push and getting in. And then that is how you have that ground level to be able to have your voice literally speaking at those tables, and then helping get other people elected. Then it is, do not fall to cynicism. So progress is something that can definitely take a while. And even if you push and try your best to get these things done, you do, at the end of the day, need the right circumstances to actually achieve everything that you're going for, or a portion of what you're going for.
Don't pray for an economic depression in hopes that a catastrophe will impact.
We shouldn't have to get that.
No, not.
If young people want to buy a house, they might need the bubble to burst at this point, though.
The Nazis did very well when economic depression hit Germany. Just don't forget.
Yeah, CJ, I know it's hard for you because this is what we often get off, but just keep us going. I'm trying, because eventually, Harvey, this show is not going to be my baby.
So do not fight for restoring your rights, but try to fight for advancing those rights. And then again, what was my last bit when I was looking at history is in 2020, we had one of the largest civil rights protests in recent history, and to very little. I will say, again, Chicago, for example, we had a teacher union backed candidate and a police backed candidate. I'm forgetting the exact margin of victory, but the teacher back and the reformist backed mayor has won. Again, I don't have the exact margin. So
Just know
there
that
is progress.
he came from a deficit. In the primaries, he was not the winner. And he overcame the difference. That's
Didn't he made up quite a difference? Like my understanding was
right.
he was like way down.
Yeah, it was like he was in the 20s, and the other guy was.
He ended up winning by about 17,000.
So on my
3 points.
Don't fall to cynicism. On my, hey, yes, we had a really bad union loss within the railway system. What is my check when my mental check where I say, yes, this union bust was really, really bad. However, we also have the most progressive climate bill in all of history that got passed within that same year period. What do I do?
It may be the most progressive climate bill, but we haven't had to worry about climate bills until now.
Yep, I recognize that. I still have that.
The greatest environmental president was probably FDR, and then Lyndon Johnson.
Roosevelt. No?
Yeah, Roosevelt. Yeah. I mean, don't forget, you had the CCC, the WPA. You had massive drought in the Midwest. Talk about climate, and they literally addressed it with massive tree plantings. They fought it.
We need that again, by the way. Just saying, the reforestation is a huge solution. Sorry.
So just keep applying. So the biggest takeaway is, and again, talking on minor victories that have happened, as slow as they have been. It's like we do have student loans that have been forgiven-ish.
No, not yet.
So the policy, as far as Biden can pass it, to my knowledge, did get passed. And it's being held up in the courts, and we'll see what the Supreme Court says, and if they even take it. And like, there's still kind of, but these policies are something that gets advocated for year over year over year. That pressure builds and builds and builds, and eventually, it starts becoming from, oh, this is this really new niche thing, to, yeah, we should absolutely have this. And that is a result of the voice. So is that our big takeaway? Is that if we want to continue?
Yeah, although I think those are all great things. I think you're giving too much credit to Biden. Look, he could have.
I'm saying that it wasn't Biden. I'm saying that Biden, the same president that did this union bust, we still had these massive policy wins that did come out, and that is from the
it wasn't actually, he didn't bust the union, he broke the strike.
Broke the strike,
he prevented the strike from taking place.
Yes.
Or another way of putting it is, he kissed the asses of the railway bosses.
Yes. So again, I'm trying to give the call to action, your summary, the takeaway.
Great, you were very comprehensive, believe me.
Yeah.
So Jen, so I can assume this is my last time on, since obviously I'm just.
No, we love you on here. It doesn't matter to us. CJ's very organized. They're very structured. And the other thing is that this is new. This is only the third episode. And we've already, we haven't even gotten down consistently the same people. So I think it's just, but yeah, they're way more organized than I am.
Yeah, no, I'm impressed, CJ.
Well, I know. See, this is why I'm bringing in young people, because Harvey, we've had you on before where you didn't even realize you were going to be on a live stream. And we bring you on and you're like, wait, I'm live? Like, yeah, welcome to the show.
I don't mind live streams. I like being told ahead of time. I might have shaved or something.
We like the element of surprise here at Generational Change.
Yeah.
But the Gen Z report is a lot more, that's why I changed my background. It's like it's their whole own thing.
By the way, CJ, you know about this Festivus thing they do every year, right?
Yes.
Okay, CJ, we have an annual.
I was the one person they brought on. Little did they realize I despised the Seinfeld show.
No, I know, and yet he gets mistaken for Larry David repeatedly.
I actually did see that coming on when it was on the segment for Bosch.
We actually had a good one this past one. It was Max who was on with us, right?
Yeah, Max was on.
And sorry, I'm blanking on the woman's name, but she was excellent.
Margaret.
Okay. So William and I'm trying to wrap up to keep these roughly within the hour. So from the organization, what do you have any comments, big takeaways on? Hey, I joined this organization. How did you find out about it? And how much growth do you feel like you've had, and how much like voice do you
Yeah,
think that you've had?
let's promote our Wisconsin Revolution.
Yeah,
Yep.
ourwisconsinrev.com. Please feel free to take a peek if you're interested. I was introduced to the organization because I was actually elected as a Bernie Sanders delegate to the 2020 convention in my hometown of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm about 15 minutes outside of Milwaukee, but for most people nationally, that's what they'll recognize because they won't know what Germantown or Washington County is. But unfortunately, the convention had to go virtual. Public safety is paramount. I completely understand that. But the other Bernie people that I was introduced to, it was so refreshing to be able to find like-minded individuals in what's generally considered a very not safe community for these type of ideas. You know, it's very conservative, kind of rural suburbia. And that's not, Wisconsin's not like that anymore. As Harvey mentioned, you know, our state motto was quite literally forward. We are, the trends are shifting, and they're shifting very quickly. I highly advise young people to get involved. You know, full disclosure, I'm actually a young millennial. I'm not Gen Z. I was born in
Don't tell us
the
that.
mid-90s, but
You're Gen Z for tonight.
I'm Gen Z for tonight. I'll take it. I wish I was Gen Z, honestly. Gen Z, you guys talked about it. Gen Z, they don't take anybody's BS. They are coming to change the system. Young people have saved democracy once again. And if we want this trend to continue, they're going to have to see progress, right? We can't have every election cycle being the most consequential election of all time if young people show up in force, win, and nothing changes. It's going to become, you know, voting is going to become the boy who cried wolf. The Democrats are going to keep saying, you got to come vote, you got to come vote. Okay, well, we did, and you're not doing anything for us. So we're going to have to start seeing change. And Gen Z absolutely rocked it at college campuses, particularly all across the state of Wisconsin. They saved us once again.
Okay. And then again, I'm trying to get for what was your individual experience like? Was it, you know, so you got to meet with like-minded individuals, very welcoming, very,
Yeah, he
like,
wants
do you
to
feel like you
basically
found
want you
a
to
sense of
explain
community?
how people can get like into this and how people can get involved like through, and you know, obviously you're with our
Sure.
Yeah.
So I can only speak to our organization, but the way
Yeah.
that we do it is we have committees focused on individual that we consider like the most important issues, right? So we have a Medicare for All committee. We have an environmental committee that's focusing on the WCC, Wisconsin Conservation Congress right now. We have a workers' rights committee. And we want to be able to allow young people to find their specific interest and focus on that by offering, you know, let's say well-versed veterans of the industries as potential mentors. Some of the leaders of our committees are people who have been there, done that before. And they're able to kind of say to young people, hey, if this is your interest, if this is what you want to do, here's how you can help us. We have X activity, Y activity, Z activity that we can kind of help push along. Otherwise, as you mentioned, don't be afraid to go to a college campus. There's a lot of great organizing being done at the college level from a number of organizations across the state. There's other organizations Harvey's mentioned, like Progressive Democrats of America. Ample opportunities for young people to get involved. Really, you just need to express interest, because believe me, these organizations want you there. They want your help and they want your passion. They just need to know you're interested.
And you know, gosh, I you know, that sounds really, really great, but I don't feel like I'm super, you know, knowledgeable about a specific thing or have a passion. If I show up, is there going to be like a major workload on me, or am I able to kind of like dip my toes in and take a look?
100% you can dip your toes in. Oh yeah. Nobody's going to show up and say, all right, here's a notebook. I want you to go to this event and document everything that these, you know, 65-year-old white men are talking about at some really niche, you know, conservation type activity. No. You just express what you care about, why you got involved in progressive politics. Perhaps abortion and women's health is a very important issue for you. Perhaps healthcare is a very important issue. You don't have to be necessarily knowledgeable about how to change the system. You just have to want to be engaged. And there will be people who want to show you how you can bring your energy and your passion to the movement.
Okay. And then last bit is like, man, that's great, but I'm just not the best with people. Do you think it's an okay way of making friends?
Well, in my experience, it most certainly was. And that's not just friends that are around your age group. I've met so many older people in particular. Some of my closest friends in the progressive movement are women in their 70s and 80s who have been doing this for years and just couldn't break through. They didn't have the help they needed. They didn't feel like they had people around them willing to join the movement early enough to gain steam. And now that people like Bernie Sanders have come to the forefront and kind of galvanized an entire generation of young people into this movement, that you will make plenty of friends just based on shared hobbies alone.
Okay.
Yes,
Great.
soon the Democratic Party will have only 2 categories: over 70s and under 30s.
I always joke about the one token young person at every county meeting, and if they don't start doing more in these rural areas, once the elderly members age out, they're done.
It's not just rural. That's one of our biggest problems here in Broward. We are the
it?
most Democratic county in the state of Florida. And our local DEC, you will see more walkers and wheelchairs than you will anybody under the age of 50 at any of these meetings. And yet, when you look at the local Republican clubs, it is full of young people. And I wondered, originally, why is this happening? And I know from a local perspective how unbelievably exclusive and alienating our local DEC is, and how they are very particularly condescending to the young people. And to some extent, I hate to say it, but a lot of these people are just going to have to die off.
Okay.
And we're looking at that in a pretty big way here.
Okay. Well, I can. Yeah,
I've always been amazed there are any young people in Florida. That surprises me.
So yeah, I mean, we definitely do exist. I can say again, for me and my experience, I got involved. I voted in the primaries, and that's how I found out about my local organization. And like for us, there's 3 organizations throughout the county that I'm in. But you can literally look up just whatever your county is, Democrats Club. And, to your point of, okay, if there's a lot of older people, no, it's not, hey, wait for people to die off. It's, okay, maybe you go and bring a friend or 2. Again, my experience was a lot more like Williams, where this is, again, not a progressive party. This was just the Democrat, party or representative portion of that. And it is talking about strategy. It is talking about, hey, here's things that are going on. Here's votes on referendums. Here's things that are happening. And I was able to then still, vocalize my things. And there was a lot of interest because I was, the sole young person. But that then brought my opinions with a lot more weight within that group. So,
and it legitimizes the interest of other young people if they see someone that, if you're willing to do it, well, why can't I do it?
Yes. So, definitely go out and see. It is a, decent experience. If you can just look that up, that is my biggest call of action. Again, pressure internally, externally. It's been better in the past, and it's been a hell of a lot worse. But if we want to continue this advancement of change, then we have what we have to do. So
is that
any other closing comments?
Yeah. So thank you guys so much for coming on. This is the first time and it's only our 3rd episode of JenZ Report. And Harvey, you're always welcome on our show. And William, we're pretty open door for people. If you've got something going on and you want to promote, you're always welcome to reach out. But yeah, this is sort of a new little project. So, but thank you for coming and being sort of guinea pigs as our first bring on guests onto the JenZ Report.
Of course, it's a lot of fun. We need more youth involvement. I'm so happy to see CJ getting involved and sharing his passion with other people. I think that's something that does not get enough coverage. I've had so many friends who have said, yeah, I'd love to come to an event, but I don't want to be the only person under the age of 40 there. And I'm like, then come with me.
Right.
I'll be there.
Yeah.
Like it sounds scary, but it's not.
No.
Good.
Are we good, CJ? Harvey, you working on anything in particular right now?
Alan and I are still pursuing that Economic Bill of Rights. And I will also tell you, I don't know how you'll respond, I am advising Marianne Williamson.
I have my thoughts on that, but I'm all right. It's all good. Everybody's got to contribute in all their ways.
Yep. Somebody's got to be the one to advance the Economic Bill of Rights, national health care, etc.
All right.
So
guys, someone's got to do it. I did hear that Kennedy just got in.
Do we want to share?
No, we're not going to go. We're not going
to. Okay.
He hasn't called me.
Okay. He's not.
No, I mean, seriously.
I'll let him know that you'd consider it.
I don't get paid. I do these things without getting paid so I can tell people the truth and not pamper their egos.
Thank you guys so much for coming on. And that's basically it. That's a wrap, guys. Thank you. Peace out.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having us. Please stay in touch.
Absolutely.